Recording in progress.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello again, and welcome back to Don't Worry About the Government. My name is Chris Novembrino. On today's show, we've got a number of big topics to get to. We are going to talk about the Afghanistan withdrawal. Do I still feel the same way now that the Afghanistan withdrawal is over and I'm told is mission accomplished, very successful? Do I now agree with the general consensus that is being touted by the administration? We'll talk about that here in a little bit. We will also be talking about the rising coronavirus cases. The Delta variant surge still continues to build in a alarming way as we move into these winter months here. Something to definitely keep an eye on and be worried about, as we've now had 3 of the 6 largest days of cases during the coronavirus crisis during this surge, even larger than last winter. It seems like, by any reasonable measure, we may have some trouble on the horizon here in the winter months. So we'll talk a little bit about that and the administration's response, or lack thereof, on it so far. And, of course, we will talk about all politics being local, especially if you live in the state of Texas, because we have a tendency to export this crap to the rest of the country. Sorry we are about that. Texas seems to be delivering a final death blow to Roe versus Wade. Other states are, of course, stepping up on this, but Attorney General Ken Paxton has yet again delivered another piece of legislative or judicial activism to the conservative court, who has effectively outlawed abortion in the state of Texas. It's 6 weeks after your last period now in the state of Texas, so that gives people as little as 2 weeks from the time that they realize that they have missed a period to get an abortion, so effectively ending all abortions in the state and, really changing the contours of the national dynamic. A lot to discuss and a lot to unpack in that subject, and I expect that will very much be the meat and potatoes of this particular episode. Before we get into that, as you have probably already surmised, because I didn't introduce anyone else, if you're watching on video, of course, over at patreon.com/DWATG, you would notice that there's no one else on the video call, so you've already put this one together. This is a monologue show, and it's essentially a bit of a fan service to all y'all who have been asking for a while for me to hop on the microphone and do a monologue show. I am always a little gun shy to do this because I always wonder how much appetite anyone has for listening to any one person talk. And this is with someone who has friends like Bruce Carlson in my life. Clearly, people love hearing Bruce talk. So there's definitely a market for it. And so then that gets into something psychosomatic for me, which is am I one of these people who is legitimately interesting enough to carry a monologue show? And I like to think it's, maybe a bit of weird self-obsession, but a bit of humility that I tend to think I'm not, although many of you very politely argue to the contrary all the time. So I certainly realize that many of you feel otherwise, and I ought to start believing in myself. And as I tell my students all the time, if you think you can do it, you can do it. So, maybe I am one of these monologue type people. But I also really do enjoy discussing the news of the week with my friends. That being said, I do want to, acknowledge that some of the feedback that has been coming in about the panel, I think some of it is well-intentioned and some of it has been mean-spirited. I think that the people who have been coming in and giving me feedback in a well-intentioned way, you know who you are. I'm not going to name names on the show. That's weird. But you know who you are because we've had really pleasant and back and forth sort of interactions. And I really hope that you do get the sense that, from what I'm doing right now, but also from our correspondences, that I hear you. I am receptive to this feedback. I do want to always build the better mousetrap, and especially since some of y'all are patrons, you matter to me. Of course you do. Y'all matter to me, but the people who support my works with the Buck a show, do they matter more? Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. It's not even for sort of the more cynical reasons. It's these are people who have put the stamp down that hey, we think no brand products are worth something. And so, yeah, no, when someone says something like that to me, I appreciate that, and I listen to that. There have been other people. I'll point to one piece of feedback. Like, here's what's not okay to say. It's not okay to say, I could do the show better than X. That's not like an okay way to sort of like frame a thing, but it's even more not okay if I go, okay, do the show, and then you don't do the show. If you're gonna say you can do something better than somebody else, you gotta walk the walk. And also, once you start saying that about person X, Y, or Z, and it's one thing to say it about me, it kind of rolls off me. Like, nothing, I vent about it on the air. I mean, the politics in a weird way is a little bit of a therapy from, hopefully, and I've heard this as feedback too, my anger channels y'all's anger at times. I don't know if that's good or bad, but like, I want you all to know that for me, yeah, it's a little bit therapeutic to be able to talk about these things, because sometimes things, like especially the last 5 years, and we're not just talking about Trump anymore, right? Sometimes things just feel so hopeless. It's nice to be able to put on a Black Flag record if you're me and scream along with Henry Rollins, or, maybe let me be the conduit for your own frustrations, and I'm happy to do that. So I definitely appreciate that, and, if someone says that they can do the show better than me, it doesn't make me upset. It makes me amused. But what does make me upset, and I do take quite personally, and I find it insulting, is when someone says that they can do the show better than one of my friends. Because all these people who do the show, they're all my friends. The regular panelists, these are people who like the news and they follow the news and stuff, but they're doing the show on a regular basis. I'm not talking about like Josh Jackson or Matt Lewis, or Bruce Carlson. Bruce is more of a friend than the other two. Matt's kind of a friend, and Josh a little bit less so. But all of these people who do the show on a regular basis, the panelists, they are doing it because they want to be here. And comments like that make them not want to be there, and it hurts their feelings. And it hurts my feelings, not because I go, oh wow, you like hate my friend. Like, it's just, it's never good to hear someone speaking ill about your friends. And I'm not saying keep your stupid comments in your pocket. I'm saying more like, if you've got feedback, don't be a dick. I don't think that's such a big ask from anyone here. Although sometimes people seem to make the case that perhaps it's maybe a little bit bigger of an ask than it ought to be. I just wanted to say that up front. I'm more than happy to oblige y'all with more monologue shows. But please, let's be nice to these people who are nice enough to be a part of this show and be a part of your podcast feed. Ditto on audio quality. If there's something wrong with the audio quality, let me know. If there's something wrong with the video quality, I try to catch it, and that's why the weird Russian translator guy goes up for a period of time. It allows my video feed to pick up steam here until I can unfreeze it again. So, if you've got feedback, I want the feedback. I want to be 100% clear on that. The comment inbox is very much open. I do not have time to do super extensive back and forth, or if you're asking me a question that you think is a long question or is going to require a long response, please mentally allow for the idea that it might take me 2 or 3 days before I have time to sit down and give you the 20 minutes of either a written or sometimes, as you all have been privy to, a recorded response. Anything that is a long form ask, I want to give a long form answer to. I don't want to give you yes or no. Sometimes I'm getting questions that aren't yes or no. So just, bear with me on all of that. All right. That's all I got on the notes, and, let's all be nice, and let's all stay safe, and let's be a big happy community, and all these sorts of things. Let's all let's all get into the show. How about that? All right. I'm going to take a sip of water and we're going to begin. High quality H2O, baby. All right. 77% of Americans support Joe Biden's decision to end the war in Afghanistan. you got to assume these 23% are just dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. Like that can't possibly include a single liberal. From left to straight Bidenist, because it's a Biden move, and this is part of the Overton window and part of the gatekeeping effect, and actually kind of like one of the weird slight positives of Biden ending this is that like the centrist Democrats are absolutely the center. The right-wing Democrats are basically saying, hey, no, this is great. It's not like the anti-interventionist left thinks otherwise. They're mad. But it's hard to put a point on it because I don't necessarily think that they are focusing in on, to me, what is the big story of what's wrong with this withdrawal. We'll get into that in just a minute here. However, only 25% support how the withdrawal has been handled. So there is a big gulf between the actual decision to end the war and how Biden handled the withdrawal. And Biden and the establishment Democrats and the messaging from the Democratic establishment has been that the issue has been the media, that the media has been presenting in an unfair way that Biden's withdrawal is bad. They say things like compared to what? And in their defense, if we are comparing essentially only two possible options in the initial. It's either Trump's way of doing it or Biden's way of doing it. So when confronted with those two options, I think only a fool would say that Trump would be doing this better. You can look at Trump's tweet about blowing up all the equipment and then getting our boys out to give you the idea that maybe there'd be a few chairs missing from that table. That being said, we often talk about elections in the context of the lesser of two evils. In this case, I think the argument can be very clearly made that the way Joe Biden handled this withdrawal was sloppy. And when we say it's sloppy, I think that needs to be broken down into a few key tranches. One, there is the way that the withdrawal of American troops was handled. Secondarily, there is the way that the withdrawal of Afghan troops or Afghan allies, or the lack thereof of that withdrawal, was handled. And thirdly, we have the U.S. withdrawal, we have the Afghan troop withdrawal. Then we have the way Biden has talked about all the refugees. I wanted to make sure I remember my three lists. I didn't want to have a Rick Perry moment. God knows we have enough bad things coming out of Texas these days. Can't have bad no-brand products coming out from Texas, too. Those have to be compensating for that horrible man, Greg Abbott. So we have the Afghan part of this, we have the U.S. part of this, and we also have Joe Biden's rhetoric on refugees. The Biden administration wants you to focus very, very hard on the fact that there are, according to Ron Klain, under 100 Americans left in Afghanistan, and basically view this as the metric for success. But 1 out of 3 ain't good. To quote an old Meatloaf song, I think that was the title. Pretty sure it was 1 out of 3 ain't good. Because you still have the other two. The other two being our Afghan allies. And the reason the Afghan allies matter is twofold. One, it matters because they are people and human rights should matter and human decency should matter. And your politics should be guided by your morals. It is the thing that I think conservatives get right almost to a fault, and that sometimes liberals and the left seem to be forgetting about. If you really think about the way you interact with one another, some of your politics, I'm saying this like whether it's progressives, lefties, liberals, like they necessarily are kind of like in a little bit, or not necessarily, but they are at a little bit of a disjunction here. The right is, again, to a fault, well, not so much on the pro-life thing, I guess, but they are really trying to will in their morality through their politics. They like to say that the left does that, but they are doing that very much to a T here with this abortion thing. So it matters from a moral front. Like, if we, the liberals who claim that we care about human rights and that everyone ought to be treated equally, like, you know, that thing, right? That thing that, like, broadly liberals and the left all agree on, that the egalitarian thing and the equal treatment of people. I mean, the further left you get, the more into the egalitarian thing you get. Well, what we're doing to Afghan allies right now is basically not impossible to defend from an egalitarian sort of perspective. This is one of the problems with let's just go home for 10 years sort of isolationism. You still have commitments. You are in pulling the chair out. You are letting someone fall on the ground. It's not so easy. Even leaving, you gotta leave in a way. If you came in and broke something, you kind of gotta leave in a way that doesn't break more things on the way out. We're not doing that. So that's one problem. I have this problem with it on an egalitarian level. However, if egalitarianism isn't your jam, what's going on there? Think on that one. Think about that one. Why do you feel that way? If that isn't your jam, there is one other thing that hopefully a foreign policy minded person might actually internalize, which is that the United States is on a very bad trend of burning allies, regional allies, when we help people out, and it's now in a bipartisan manner. Donald Trump burned the Kurds, and now Joe Biden is burning the Afghans. Should we have a reason to? And I don't think we should, because we should be done. We should have learned our lesson from this. But let's say, because the future is weird, we have some reason to be back in the Middle East again at some point. I don't know why. I what I'm throwing out there is not like, oh, are you saying like we're gonna go to war with Iran? No, I'm not even saying it like that. Although, like, if you were a Republican, you might want to think about this kind of shit. Play a little bit into the future here. They've been so bad at that, but why would it be any different on foreign policy? But they claim to be the serious people on this. Think about this for 2 seconds. Think if. And they would feel this way. If they had gotten screwed, if they had been stabbed in the back, they absolutely 100% would never want to do business with country X ever again. Country X would be a sworn enemy. Like, if America had been stabbed in the back by whatever country, you never hear the end of it from conservatives. And yet, this is what we've done to the Afghans. This is what we've done to the Kurds, who are our major ally in Iraq and our major ally in Syria as well. Really, our major ally in the region over the last decade or so, 2 decades or so. Because of this, it's really hard to say, oh, okay, well, we did a good job on the Afghan thing. I think we'll take a look at these numbers of how many people we've left behind, every one of them walking, talking advertisements for the stabbed in the back narrative. And the third reason, or the third thing I wanted to talk. So we had the U.S. troop thing. I really Rick Perry'd myself coming up with these 3 things. This is the new game within a game here. So we had the U.S., we had the Afghans, and what was the other thing that I was trying to get at? Oh man, we'll see. We'll see if it comes back to me here as I start talking about the majority of Afghan allies who applied for special visas left behind in Afghanistan. So Joe Biden touting, of course, that this has gone really well. The third thing was like the way it was handled. And the way it was handled looked really bad optically. And I mean, the Taliban taking, like, they were going to take everything over, but like Joe Biden said so many different bad things along the way here. So there's how it played out and how it looked, and none of this looked good outside of, we got the U.S. guys out. Joe Biden's talking about refugees and stuff too. Yeah, that kind of plays into the optics thing. That was the third item. And hard to defend those other 2 tranches with any degree of vigor, the same way you might defend, hey, we got all the Americans out. And that's a real problem when you're treating Americans not like Afghans and they fought side by side. What does that say about egalitarianism? Not everyone's created equal. So, U.S. official, this is from NBC News, NBC, a senior State Department official said Wednesday that it appeared that, quote, a majority of Afghans who had worked for the U.S. military and applied for the special immigrant visas, the SIVs, had not been successfully evacuated and remained in Afghanistan. I don't have an estimate for you on the number of SIVs and family members who are still there, said the senior official who was in Kabul for the evacuation. But I would say it's a majority of them based on the anecdotal evidence and the populations that we were able to support. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said that about 31,000 people evacuated from Afghanistan to the U.S. between August 17th and 31st, roughly 23,000 were Afghan allies and family members considered at risk from the Taliban. The Biden administration has said that more than 120,000 people in total were evacuated by the United States and coalition aircraft from July through the final U.S. withdrawal, and that's a number that includes Americans and other nationalities as well as Afghans. So, playing a little coy with how many Afghans there were, and you'd like to think that if there was a bigger number than 23,000, we probably would have heard of it. I really tried to dig into this one because the numbers are a little bit murky. On Wednesday, the Pentagon released new figures. Mark Milley said about 20,000 Afghans have arrived in 8 military bases in the United States, a number similar to that of the State Department's figures for Afghan allies evacuated to the United States. Milley said that more than 40,000 Afghan evacuees were at bases in the Middle East and in Europe. He did not provide a breakdown of how many of those evacuees had worked with either U.S. troops or diplomats. So if you want to run a tally with that, this is of all coalition forces. Remember, a lot of coalition forces here. A total of 60,000 have been evacuated. It's not great. Separately, another group of Afghans were eligible for other forms of expedited U.S. visas due to their associations with U.S.-funded groups or projects. That group could total 145,000 Afghans. The numbers speak for themselves, said Chris Purdy. So we're talking about tens of thousands, and they're saying there's hundreds of thousands is the discrepancy here. The numbers speak for themselves, said Chris Purdy of Human Rights First, who along with other advocates had urged the administration to launch the evacuation months earlier. And so when people are being critical of the administration, the thing that the administration likes to go back on is, what would you have had us do? Stay in there for 20 years? No. You became president on January 20th. Supposedly. That's not what Mr. Trump says. But let's suppose you did become president on January 20th. You knew this Afghanistan withdrawal was negotiated errantly by Donald Trump. You knew that because Donald Trump sort of thought that everything was hunky-dory, it probably wasn't going to be, and you needed to pull out. The problem with the Biden administration was that they were blithely acting like the Taliban was not going to regain control, or if they believed internally that the Taliban was not going to get was going to get control, they were in fact messaging in the opposite direction, which kind of serves as throwing down the gauntlet of like, hey Taliban, bet you can't get control of your country again. Oh no, you're getting control of the country again. Oh, whoopsie doopsies. This outcome was completely avoidable, said Adam Bates. Had the administration listened to the many organizations and individuals who have been calling for an evacuation since the first announcement of the withdrawal timeline back in April, so they're spotting them all the way up to April, the evacuation could have taken place alongside the U.S. military withdrawal instead of, and this is the most important part, again going back to, no, Joe Biden's treating Americans and Afghans the same way. No, it was the U.S. military first and the Afghan allies after. So they were like an afterthought. If we got time, we'll help some of the Afghan allies. So at the end of this, do I think that this was good, great, noble, wonderful? No. Yes, of course we should be out of Afghanistan. But the way we have left Afghanistan will serve as a hindrance should we ever need to go back into Afghanistan. God fucking help us. But all of the people who were screwed over by the United States government could become radicalized. If they ended up hating the United States government because of this, would you really blame them? Would you? Would you really? I'm reminded of this old rap song from Mr. Lif after 9/11. He got a little bit of heat from it. But like the last line was, they killed us because we've been killing them for years. This is the sort of stuff that ends up as that sort of little rhyming couplet that speaks to a fundamental truth here. We are ceding the wind with this. And it should be noted, it should be criticized, and it's useful and meaningful for a progressive, liberal critique of the Biden presidency to exist. Because otherwise, who's going to do it? The people who are just thrilled that we're going home and want to be home no matter what. And yeah, maybe there'll be some bloodshed and terrorism, but we got things to focus on here. I'm talking about the left there, or the right, who sort of delight in the notion that Muslims are going to just be fighting at each other and be at each other's throats, fighting over a God that they all think is fake. They delight and they take glee in that because they think the people over there as, not quite with it yet. Like they just don't get this 21st century. They like to say, the 6th century. Like they don't want to say primitive, because when you say primitive, it's like only 2 steps away from simian, right? At that point, we know what you're really trying to do here. So they say, we're returning to the 6th century. But like you see the game afoot here. There needs to be a meaningful progressive pushback that, like, yes, of course we should be getting out of Afghanistan, but we should defend human rights. And in a 21st century where our major geopolitical adversary, which is China, is blasé about human rights and blasé about property rights and blasé about the rights of business, I mean, our advertisement to the world is our commitment to these things. And insofar as we fall short of these things, we're doing ourselves geopolitical, geostrategic ill will and malfeasance, beyond failing, the Kantian categorical imperative or the golden rule, or just being nice to one another. Don't be a dick. Beyond failing any of those basic axioms, we are shooting ourselves in the foot when it comes to foreign policy. And I think that it's just so clear. This war was a disaster. We gained nothing. We lost so much. And, I still remember, and I was a deep minority opinion at the time. I remember when Joe Biden gave his speech at the 2012 DNC, the National Convention, where, Obama and Biden accepted the nomination again. And Joe Biden was standing up there and just crowing about how America needed the blood of Osama bin Laden to heal. I want to say he said something like, we needed the blood to heal. Like, it was like explicitly like, we needed the blood. And, we were there for 7-8 more years after that. I'm like, when will the healing stop, Joe? How much more blood do we need? And at the end of it, it all just seems so pointless. It seems just so utterly pointless. And I feel for all the military guys who are looking at this and going like, what was all this for? And again, going back to further critiques of the administration, the way we have handled the war, and this is not just exclusive to Biden, of course, but like the withdrawal part is, but like, Trump mismanaged this, and, Obama and Bush mismanaged. Bush, of course, deserves like the largest amount of blame for all of this, right? But you can definitely imagine an entire class of veterans going, what was all this for, stabbed in the back. And that has a history of going to places where we don't necessarily want to go, which is not good, because in America right now, and man, I was talking with one of my conservative friends about this, and he even started to come around to the notion this is a problem. I really view vigilantism and this idea of I'm going to take matters into my own hands because I no longer trust the institutions to do it for themselves. It's a real problem. I mean, the right likes to talk about this in the sense of cancel culture. When I make them identify cancel culture as essentially a sense of vigilantism, then we can suddenly revisit the other senses of vigilantism that people have been taking upon themselves. Kyle Rittenhouse, for example. Or what will now be happening in the wake of this new Texas anti-abortion law. So this week, Texas enacted the nation's most restrictive abortion ban after the Supreme Court failed to rule on an emergency request from a Texas abortion clinic. The law, known as Senate Bill 8, prohibits doctors from even performing abortions if a fetal heartbeat is detected. And it's worth noting that the heartbeat is not so much a heartbeat as an electric pulse, and what we're calling a heart is really nebulous at this point, which is about 6 weeks into a pregnancy and before many women are even aware that they are pregnant. The law makes no exception for pregnancies resulting in incest or rape, or from incest and rape, and also deputizes private individuals, like including the incestor or the rapist, to sue anyone who performs the procedure or aids and abets it. So if you are a cousin who rapes another cousin and you find out that she's trying to get it aborted, and it's after the 6-week period, you can get a $10,000 reward. Individuals found to have violated the law would have to pay $10,000 to the person who successfully brings this suit. It's too gross to even look into, but I was wondering if that would more or less offset the costs and if this was like the most bizarre and disgusting loophole ever made. In an emergency request to the courts, abortion providers wrote that the law, quote, would immediately and catastrophically reduce abortion access in Texas, barring care for at least 85% of Texas abortion patients, those who are 6 weeks pregnant or greater, and likely forcing many abortion clinics ultimately to close. Biden called the ban extreme, saying it, quote, blatantly violates a woman's constitutional right to have an abortion, as affirmed by Roe versus Wade. He added that his administration was deeply committed to a woman's right to have an abortion and pledged to, quote, protect and defend that right. How, Joe? How? When? With what level of intensity? I look forward to the day. The Supreme Court, however, is expected to enact the law, though there is no timeline. In May, the court agreed to review Mississippi's ban on a procedure after 15 weeks of pregnancy, which directly challenges Roe versus Wade. Arguments are expected later this year with a ruling in 2022. So this is going to be coming down the pike here, probably in our summer docket, and it is hard to imagine Roe versus Wade still being in existence when we get to the summer of 2022. This is bleak, man. The Handmaid's Tale, the ex tried to make me watch it. It's just a bad show. Not a good show. Not a good show. Very, very predictable. Very, very blasé. But, you know, I see why it has salience and relevance to a lot of people because many of us were warning you all. This is where they have been going. This has been the agenda. It's something I talked about during the primaries, even though people tried to argue that, oh, you're holding the Supreme Court hostage. Well, who's the hostage now, Hostage Johnny? It looks like you got the gun to your head, pal, and so do I. Fancy that. It looks like a hostage situation here, doesn't it? This is the problem. Like, look, sometimes the establishment people, yes, they're making arguments to their own cynical ends, but they're not wrong. The best arguments are not lies. The best arguments are truths that are being leveraged. And in this case, the Supreme Court argument is very relevant. Now, let me flip the script on the establishment. Fuck y'all. You guys have really created this mess. Goes back to Barack Obama and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Saint Ruth. Oh, she's so wonderful. Oh, let us have a musical for Saint Ruth. Oh, she did so many wonderful things through her career. We could talk about her ruling on the Oneida Indians and how, like, ancient sovereignty no longer exists and how they had no claim back to ancient sovereignty, and ancient in this case would have been like less than 80 years prior to when she was writing this ruling. Like, just insulting to call these sorts of things ancient for a liberal lion like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And of course, Obama went to her back around 2013 and was like, well, Ruth, I have been thinking that it might be good if maybe you thought 80 was enough. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg decided that she instead wanted to put out workout tapes for all of us to goo goo gaga over on the internet. And Twitter loved it. They said sake bomb. They didn't even know what sake bomb meant, but they were just like, sake bomb! Sake bomb! And someone was like, drinking? No, I don't know what this means yet. I will in 7 years. I'll have an irrational love for a press secretary. It will make no sense because I lived through fucking Sean Spicer, but I'll have it. So there is this great praise for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because she couldn't let go of power, because, as I've been saying for years, and yeah, I will take a victory lap on this stuff, that in any other context, we would say to a 75-year-old, hey, isn't it time to retire? Vince McMahon, we talk about him over on the wrestling show. Perhaps you've heard of Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is 75, and it's now openly being discussed when he's going to retire, and it's been sort of a talking point for the last several years. And this is Vince McMahon, a guy who you like have to pry the remote control from his cold dead hands on. Like, he does not want to retire. Even him, we talk about him in the context of 75 years old. It's time for Vince to be thinking about stepping down. Their politicians, including the Democratic nominee, the last two guys finishing in the Democratic Party, were way over that age threshold. And the Democratic electorate was like, this is fine. I'm generally fine, okay with this. Like, I'm not. I get that the president should be a little bit older, but no, I actually think, like Pete had any number of problems with him, but like I'd much rather have a 40 or 50-year-old president than a 70-year-old president or a 75 or an 80-year-old president. Thank you very much. Please give me a 50-year-old. Sounds okay to me. It seems like the right age. Seems like, if I have 45, actually, like to me, like the perfect age. You're just, like second half of life, but you're also like not so old that you're completely out of touch with things. Like in 55, you are like, you're now 20 years away from relevancy. 45, you're only 10 years away from like still kind of being hip and with it. See, for me, every day it's fading. I feel it. I feel it ebbing out of my body. It hurts. It hurts. All I want to do is rock. And I know that I will still rock, but I will not be cool. And that does sadden me. That does sadden me sometimes. We're talking about this Texas law. It's really horrible. So Republican officials, after this Texas law was rendered, in more than a half dozen states across the country moved to replicate the restrictive abortion ban. So what this is judicial reinforcement, because the Republicans are using non-majoritarian means to enact their policy on the country. It is an asymmetric warfare. And so when people like America's hero Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema are like, oh, we must talk to the other side, let us work together, I have a great idea. What is it, Joe? Do nothing. But that's beyond everything else with them. Where's the ideas? Where's the beef? They don't have anything. So on one hand, the Republicans sit over here like, thank you for buying us time as we leverage anti-majoritarian means to do with what we want. And meanwhile, Joe Manchin sells a fantasy politics that fantasizes about a Republican Party and a conservative movement that does not exist. I've been having a back and forth about moderate Democrats or whatever. And I guess my thought on moderate Democrats is they need to wake the fuck up about what the other side of the aisle is. Like, they think on the other side of the aisle is just more of them. No, friendo. No, these are people who are ambivalent about the Capitol riots, fine and supportive of the abortion ban. Like, there is no middle of the road. If you're talking about banning abortion, we tried middle of the road. Roe is the middle of the road. Roe is the compromise. And the compromise isn't good enough for them. So there it is. I mean, Roe actually tried to introduce in a sloppy, imperfect way the concept of life as a spectrum. And I've talked about my brother on this show, but I'm going to do it again because why can you talk about abortion, Chris? One, I mean, like, look, conservatives like to say it's a cop-out to not talk about it. Okay, I'll take the gauntlet on this. I've been dealing with this life as a spectrum thing for as long as I've had conscious thought. Some of my first memories are being in a nursing home where my brother's body was, Bob Ross in The Joy of Painting, being on the TV in a dark nursing home nursing home room that was lit with fluorescent lights, and my brother's there, and I remember staring at my brother's body in there, kept alive with a food tube. Rotated, but really no actual meaningful thought. No conscious thought, no conscious communication and stuff, and going like, he's not alive like me. He's alive, but he's not alive like me. And I just had I was more inartful about, I'm like, he's not alive. My parents, were arguing with me, but then they also kind of got what I was getting at too, which is that a thing that I understood as a child, under the age of 5. Life is a spectrum. And one of the things I've always kind of really, Roe, I get its flaws and I recognize those flaws as flaws. However, the right to privacy thing, that it is ultimately a medical decision that this person is undertaking, especially at that part of the life spectrum, makes perfect sense to me. The idea that there is a life spectrum makes perfect sense to me. We ought to be thinking about that in a broader context than even just during pregnancy. There's a life spectrum as you are alive, because you're alive and then you sort of fade away. That's the nature. We don't just I mean, some of us fall off a cliff. Others we wish would fall off a cliff. But most of us languish for a while, and our light slowly flickers out. And we're less alive than we once were every day. That's so natural, and we know this. And it's now gone. So what I have been thinking about this week, a number of different things. One, where's corporate America? Where is woke capitalism on this one? And how long can they really sit on the sidelines with all these lady bosses? I don't think that this one is going to be so easy. I think that there's going to be a real push by companies to consider leaving Texas because essentially their female employees are not getting equal treatment under the law in the state of Texas. And if they ignore it, they're making a value statement. And if they don't ignore it, they're also making a value statement. I hope they don't ignore it. Another group of people who I hope do not ignore this, who have been ignoring this so far, are the NBA players. Hey, LeBron James and other members of the NBA who like to scold all the rest of us that we ought to, and you're right to do so, and you are right to do so, friends, that we ought to be standing up side by side with y'all to fight alongside on important matters that I support. Whither you right now, friends? LeBron, I Googled earlier today. I was like, okay, I made that comment online, but like, I don't want to get on the air and go, LeBron's not saying anything about this shit. What the fuck, LeBron? Unless I was actually one hundo on the fact that LeBron said nothing on this. Not a peep, LeBron. Solidarity, my friend. Solidarity, mon frere. We need all hands on deck right now. If you want to talk about other issues, you want to get on board with this, I get you want to just like pick and choose your battles, but like, gotta remember who you're asking to stand alongside you and who's been standing alongside you. And friends help friends. God, can we please learn that lesson one of these days? If someone helps you, you gotta help them back. We didn't learn it in Afghanistan. LeBron James hasn't learned it yet here. So those are two groups of people who I'd like to see maybe step it up a little bit more. The NBA players. Look, I get that maybe some of their politics are complicated on this. That's the thing they need to do some serious inward looking on here, friends, because again, it's about egalitarianism. And if we're gonna say I want to be treated equal, but yeah, women want to be treated equal too, sir. Yeah, you want to be treated equal? I get it. I want you to be treated equal too. I want her to be treated equal. Everybody's got to be, it's got to be a commonly held view here. And again, for those of you who don't feel this way about the treating people equal thing, what's going on? Look inward. I can't do it for you. You got to do that. But no, do it. Look in. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this affects the midterms. I know. And I have been aware of people involved with the show here who keep assuring me, despite me telling you, don't say it so soon, friend, that the Democrats are absolutely going to lose in the midterms. And I will sort of finish off with this thought on it. This is a perfect example of a situation that absolutely could be energizing for Democrats in the midterms. I'll give you a case for energized Democrats in the midterms. And it has not so much to do with Joe Biden doing a great job, because he ain't. See COVID-19, mission accomplished. We beat it. V-Day. We beat it. July 4th. Woo. Oh, this is more of the Afghanistan Space Invaders thing. All right. So anyways, yeah, it's not going to be because of Joe Biden. It's going to be because of COVID-19 still being around. And though we don't like Joe Biden, we now have seen Republicans be so dumb on this so many times that I tell you, if you are listening to this show and you're like, I don't like the Democrats, and dude, Republicans have a chance to get power in your state. Oh my God. Come on, buddy. You gotta go and vote out the Republicans for the good of your state and everyone around you, and as part of a harm mitigation, you do. These people are idiots, and they can't keep being on school boards. They can't, they just gotta all go. The party is useless. They it's not saying all Democrats are good, but if you're gonna sit here and tell me all cops are bad, I got one for you, Arab. Not Arab and not Arab like that, but all Republicans are bad. They're all bad. And if they're not all bad, you'll be like, oh, there's a good apple in there. Isn't that, ACAB? Like, they're like, yeah, no, I'm not saying it like that, but like, in general, ACAB people, in general, Arab, like, they're all bad. They're all bad. They all have to go. And that's what you're saying when you say ACAB. So same idea here. All these Republicans are bad. They all have to go. It's not all Democrats are good. God, no. It will never be all Democrats are good. But, like, you show me the good Republican. Adam Kinzinger, right? Justin Amash no longer in Congress. I mean, you will give me, I guarantee you, if I threw this out to the entire of the audience, and actually, you know what, I have a hunch that y'all who respond to me will come back with no more than 5 good Republicans at the congressional level. Like, it'll be like Lynn Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, I don't know. But they gotta be active if you're even to make this pitch to me. But and this is a smart audience too. I'm like not slagging all of you on this. I mean, if I got respondents, because y'all are fucking smarter than me. Like, y'all are only gonna give me 5 names, and it's gonna be like the same 5 people over and over again, because they don't exist. They don't exist. It's like, yes, is there a good cop in the Dallas Police Department? Yeah, I taught lessons to the guy years ago. There was that guy who came in the other day who I told you about the hot water heater and was like absolutely not going to cover this landlord's ass. All right, guy. He was all right on that front. Okay, cool. That doesn't make the Dallas Police Department good. Amber Geiger, anyone? How about we go ask both of them, John? Oh, is there an issue with that? Yeah, I guess so. No, like all these Republicans are bad. So they all got to get voted out in the midterms here. I can see that being a clarifying and crystallizing thought for a lot of Democrats. It certainly is for me, no matter how frustrated I am with Joe Biden. These Republicans have to go. They got to go. They got to go. Now we couple that with Roe versus Wade. Now Democrats, all of a sudden, the polling on the Supreme Court is up. People are starting to realize that. I mean, even in my own state, I'm seeing the disapproval for Greg Abbott above 50%. Democrats and the Democratic electorate are still angry. Like, yeah, we got Joe Biden in, and in part because of his fecklessness and the fact that this situation lingers, let's like never lose sight of that. I actually see pissed off Democrats wanting to punch Republicans, and then there's one last thing here on the horizon where I think that this really could be a positive midterm for the Democrats, despite like all the history. I'm aware of the history. Please do not give me a history lesson on every year, but other than 2002. I know. I'm telling you 2002 is an exceptional case, and I'm making you the exceptional case right now. I think the other one is that Donald Trump's getting ready to announce that he's going to run again. And I don't think that Jim Jordan comment that was caught on videotape was an accident or a blooper. I don't think he was like trying to be cute. He's not that smart. He's a blabbermouth. And I think he's telling the truth, and he says Trump's going to run again. And if Trump runs again, that is going to piss a lot of people, myself included. We're going to make sure that we slam the fucking door on that man forever. And if you are not in that crowd, boy, buddy, oof, you have not learned. Have you not learned? If it hasn't sang home yet. But I'm also kind of at a point where it's like I don't even have time to argue with those people anymore. Not really. I have time to talk about it on the show. I don't have time to actually like sit there and try to change their minds because it's hard. It's impossible, maybe. I relayed on the Patreon side trying to change the amount of an anti-vaxxer here, and I thought that I had broken through and really made my like earnest, best, good faith effort. And we're living in different worlds now. We're just living in different worlds. So I think that this abortion thing is going to have ripples. I think there's one other thing that is a big wild card, and that's the health of Clarence Thomas. He says he's healthy. But Clarence Thomas and Breyer are looking to retire, and Klobuchar sort of signaling Breyer's going to be stepping down soon. A lot of things are going to be very energizing. The Supreme Court is going to be in the minds of Democrats, as well it should be, and as well it should have been 5 years ago and during the Democratic primaries last time when we were talking about expanding the court, and there was some candidates who were saying that they wanted to expand the court, and there were other candidates who went further in the race who none of whom wanted to expand the court and none of whom were against the filibuster at the time. I'm going to keep bringing it up because it keeps being a problem. I think that there is My favorite one of those people, I'm passive aggressively mentioning the two finalists, but like Klobuchar this week's like, I just realized that the filibuster was a problem. Oh, really, Amy? Where's the salad bowl when I need it? Yeah, no, like these are obvious problems here, and they are standing in the way of the stimulus bill here. A lot of things that are going to be on the minds of Democrats, and meanwhile, on the Republican side of the aisle, this COVID thing keeps happening, and it is going after their counties, and it is going after their voting electorate. And last year, it infected millions of people and killed hundreds of thousands of people. And this year, right now, the hospitalizations and those affected by it are largely the unvaccinated. So you will have the people who don't survive it, many of whom are probably Republican voters based on what the sign says, or maybe kind of like Joe Rogan, I am not politically interested types. And then you will also have a lot of people who survive this, and if they have a severe enough case or have long COVID or whatever, they are not going to want to hear about this anti-vaxxing stuff or that COVID is a myth. If someone has long COVID, they are not going to want to hear about COVID as a myth. This is a rift that is going right down the middle of their party. It's not down the middle either. I mean, it's like 80-20, but which is almost worse in a way. At least split down the middle will at least make both sides think that they need to sit down at a table and have like a discussion to find a détente because they can't live without each other. 80-20 makes the 80% believe that they can win without the other 20%. And I see that as a potential problem. I don't, especially since Republicans now think all elections are rigged. Don't be surprised. Like, they're trying to rig the elections, but don't be surprised that they don't have the vote support behind it. They almost sort of need Mr. Trump to go and announce that he's going to run for president so that they can get the base juiced up to go to the votes for the midterms, which I don't think Kristi Noem and all these other aspirants to the office are going to like. But I think they're just going to have to learn to live with it. So I will end on this. If you think that the Democrats are going to get blown out in the midterms, they might. I would still put my money on that. But if I could put a hedge bet on that, or like bet the do not pass line or something like that, I might play it a little bit, to be completely honest. I might hedge my bets a little bit here because I think that the Democrats have at least a straight draws chance in poker terms here to keep my betting analogies going on. I think they have a straight draws chance of winning in the midterms here, to actually picking up seats, because people, not unlike myself, still see that this Republican Party is maybe even less qualified to govern now than when Trump was in office, believe it or not. I mean, the fact that they had a smashing of the Capitol, an opportunity to get off. They're like the junkie who had the opportunity to get off the smack, and we saw them get offered a trip to the best rehab, and then they went into the rehab and, I don't know, like started dealing drugs in it. I'm not really sure where that analogy went. They had an off-ramp. They could have gotten off the trolley. They want to go full speed ahead. And in that paradigm, I think really all of us just need to be really steely-eyed with what we're dealing with, whether you are a moderate Democrat who wants to be spoken to, or someone who thinks that the Democrats are too far outside of your realm of possibility. That's going to do it for this episode of Don't Worry About the Government. You can support the show over at patreon.com/DWATG. You can find me on Twitter at DWATG. If you want to see videos and that sort of thing, go to YouTube and check out our YouTube account. And also now, if you're interested in my guitar wares, you can get on and to search for Cristo Vambrino on YouTube and find my YouTube channel, which is just dedicated to music and guitar playing and that sort of thing. So those are all the places that you can find me. Review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. I want to thank you guys all so much for listening and supporting the show. And until the next one, bye-bye.